We are live, another restaurant expert roundup. It's Matt Plapp. We'll be back in 1 minute, actually a few seconds, with Chef Todd. Chef Todd Annis, how are you today?
I am fantastic. Thanks for having me on, Matt. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. So what's the weather like? You're in Charleston, South Carolina. What is it like right now?
Well, right now it's for the first time in a couple of days, sunny and very hot, but it has been obviously very rainy with the rest of the East Coast. But today's a good day.
Yeah, you had that torrential downpour come through North and South Carolina this time last week, right?
Yep. It was pretty brutal. Luckily, Charleston itself kind of missed that.
Yeah.
So the middle, obviously in Tennessee area and North Carolina got pummeled, and then up north, in the New England area. Yep. But we somehow missed it. So we're very fortunate.
So tell us about yourself. I know about you because I found your podcast back in the spring, I think it was, Catering WTF.
Yep.
So tell us about yourself, about your background, what you do, and all that good stuff.
So my background, I've been working in restaurants since I was 13. So my whole life experience basically has been, mostly in and out of kitchens. Early on, I worked at a bunch of restaurants, ended up being more working in independent restaurants as a sous chef type of thing. Also, and then went to culinary school because I found that was the career path that I was going to take, wanting to do that whole open your own restaurant type of thing. And I did some of that in Atlanta, worked for a lot of restaurants there as executive chef, one as part owner, things like that. And then literally got hooked up with a good friend of mine that worked for a company called Fifth Group in Atlanta. And they were really expanding at that time and kind of blowing up in the more midtown, downtown area. And I applied for a restaurant there and was in the running to open and run that restaurant. And they needed some help in their catering department. And so ended up literally what was supposed to be a year just helping them in the catering area ended up being 14 years in the catering world. And they opened like 8 more restaurants after I was still in the catering company. So just a learning curve really between catering and restaurants and different things like that. So I really enjoyed it. It's definitely different than restaurants, and it can be a struggle at a lot of times. It takes a certain individual and certain people that can do that. But at the same time, still keeping the quality of catering as a restaurant style, making everything in-house from scratch, bringing, building kitchens off-site, that type of thing. So kind of started working through that. And when I was working with them after my 4th year, I decided that the difference is so great between a restaurant chef and a catering chef that I started looking into more specific education in that. So I went to the ICA, which is the International Catering Association, and some of the shows that they have and the classes, and ended up taking some classes there, talking with a lot of people. And in doing so, they were like, "You're actually doing great. You should teach classes." So I started to teach classes for them. I started doing classes for CaterSource, doing different things like that, and ended up starting to kind of build this almost like the consulting group that we started is designed for more caterers and for boots on the ground type of thing. Okay. There's a lot of sales out there that you can get about how to do sales better and even marketing. There's some marketing, but not specifically to catering and how marketing works in the catering realm. And there's virtually very few on food costs, labor cost, how to run a business, how to deal with 14 parties, on a Saturday one week, and then one party the next week. How do you staff for that? How you balance that budget? So I started really working on those type of things and trying to learn as much as I could, and then impart that with obviously friends that I had connected with, and having those type of conversations, very similar to what we're doing here. Yep. And so that's pretty much it. That's my history. Was first part of my culinary career for a long time was independent restaurants, executive chef, that type of thing, being very creative, wanting to go in that realm, and then somehow got hooked up into catering. And then next thing you know, have spent the second part of my career kind of trying to figure that part out and how to make the catering world better. So
Yeah,
that's
it's interesting because I know a lot of people that got stuck in the catering side. That
yeah,
I think the reasoning behind it was that so many people before them had your similar background but failed miserably at the catering part. And so the people I know that didn't fail, that actually had their stuff together and pieced everything together and realized it was a different operation than just running a kitchen for a steakhouse on a Saturday night. They when they figured it out, these operators realized, okay, I've got something here. I had
that's exactly right. And that's kind of how we look for it. We still look for chefs. We want high-end restaurant chefs, and here in Charleston and in Atlanta, that's what we were looking for. And it just takes somebody who really likes logistics, really is what it comes down to, because you still get the creative opportunity, still get to do super cool food, and you do get to directly work with the planners and the the bride and grooms or the corporate client or whoever it is, creating really cool stuff. But with that comes, you have to know your parameters. Like, where are we? Are we in a field? And what is the rain plan? And certain things that restaurant chefs, no matter how hard their day is, don't have to deal with. So,
and I think it also comes down to a different mind that thinks that way. Because,
yes.
sometimes, people think about what they're delivering. I mean, look at the pandemic. How many restaurants thought they could have to-go food and their food wasn't that good to go? I talked to an operator probably 3 or 4 months ago, and I said, how's your food to go? And he goes, it's funny you mentioned that. I said, why? He goes, well, we started doing third-party ordering. This is a higher-end restaurant. He said, we started doing third-party ordering. They did a bunch of catering. They did a lot of different things. But he's like, when third-party ordering hit, we decided to bite the bullet, try it out, because we still had limited capacity here. And he said, but I did something different. I went to a friend's house, and I had my friend order our food from Uber Eats. And it came in, and it was terrible. Like, to me, it wasn't what I wanted people to experience or remember us by. And he's like, and it took me going back and saying, okay, what are we doing differently in-house? What do we do at catering events? How do we merge the two? But a lot of people have, not figured that component out from a standpoint of how to get the food to the right place, because you got to have a different mind. You can't be thinking about what this food looks like on a table 30 feet away. You're thinking about what it looks like 5 miles away on a table.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a different mindset. And to that same point too, you got to watch it's a quality issue. So there's certain things that even when we build our own kitchen or anything like that, even if we do we had obviously a to-go thing too during the pandemic that went very good. We did kits that we sold. It's a different mindset. There's certain things that just don't translate. So you have to understand what that is and how to do it. And even though we have clients that ask, we know it's not going to translate on the end to be where we want it to be. So we don't use those products or sell those products, and we try and steer them in a different direction.
Yeah. I got a question for you. So I want to get your feedback on this, because I had a friend of mine who was in the restaurant business, and she did catering sales. So she worked for an operation that had 2 different brands, did catering sales, and crushed it. She was great. The restaurant delivered on their end. Everything went really smooth. She got recruited to go to another brand. And, you get lured away, you get more money, you see a little more freedom, a little more opportunity. She went there. She had a couple more brands in her portfolio. The restaurants could not deliver on the experience. And that was, she ended up doing about 1.5 years there, and then going to another brand that actually did it correct. But it was wild to see, because in her mind, the restaurants she left were set up similar to the one she went to. And their whole thing was, oh my gosh, that store she's at are opening up with $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 in the till before they've even had a customer walk through the door. So they're like, we've got to get catering. And she found out really quick that they just didn't have the people in the 4 walls whose minds worked correctly for the food leaving the business.
Yeah. That's a tough sale. I mean, during the pandemic here, we're struggling with some of the same things. We have a fantastic sales team here, and they've been here a long time. So they're used to pre-pandemic, like, what are our levels of staffing, of the, consistent employees, and with the current culture in the world today, as far as not being able to staff stuff, we've had to really tone down how many parties we can take, because we don't want that level of quality to drop, and then not fulfill not only the client's vision, but also trying to deal with that sales component, with how do you deal with that? How do you tell salespeople they can't sell?
Yeah.
Because we're trying to watch that. So it is that. And then the same thing with, in that particular story you were telling me, it comes down to, again, who's the leader in the kitchen and the owner, and how are they handling that to-go stuff? And is it looked at the same way as they did in the restaurants?
Yeah.
Luckily, we have some very good restaurants in Charleston. Charleston's a pretty foodie town, so we're very supportive of each other and very critical of each other. So we talk a lot, and people have done a really good job here for the most part doing that. And we have a lot of barbecue and things like that are easy to do when you're easier to do than some of the fine dining stuff.
So what would be your advice? A lot of restaurants out there, they're coming out of the pandemic. They've got more momentum than they've ever had before from a standpoint of non-dine-in. I mean, I talk to restaurants every week that say, man, Matt, when this pandemic thing kind of is eventually over at some point, maybe in 30 years, who knows now, when it's eventually over. And I'm excited because we've figured out on our end how to, we're at the same sales level we were 2 years ago, and our dine-in hasn't really come back full capacity. And a lot of them are seeing, okay, what do I take from this to-go aspect? How do I create a catering division? Because that's the one thing. I mean, that's like the golden goose out there, is every restaurant wants to cater because they see a restaurant down the street that caters and does this great stuff and wants to do it. And a lot of them fail. What are a couple things you would tell an operator, like a conversation to have with their chef? Because a lot of times operators make a decision, I'm going to do this, and not talk to their kitchen staff. What would be a couple of conversations you think that owner operator needs to have before they take that jump?
The first one is you have to have a business model to produce that. So just like in catering or any restaurant. So once you get to full capacity, it's not about just adding 50 more catering covers to the evening. You have to have a plan for that and a staff for that. So you have to think, if people are ordering and it's dinner time and your restaurant's full capacity at 7:00 and you take on another 50 covers in to go, who's managing that part? Who's cooking for that part? Who's packaging for that part? Who's quality control for that part? So the big thing that we try and do is try and plan on, like, if we come, when we get back to full capacity, can we or can we not continue this kit program? And where do we put our energy into? And can we split it up? And do we have room in the restaurant or in the facility to be able to accommodate that in a safe and quality way? So I think that it comes down, really, the first part of it is more a facility and labor planning strategy before you can jump into that. I do know I had a good friend of mine in Atlanta that had the same exact problem. He was killing it on the to-go stuff. They started coming back. Luckily in Georgia, they can pretty much open full time. So we opened full time, still tried to keep the catering, and the catering quality went down because the focus became back on the restaurant. Yeah. And it's like, okay, there's no plan for that. And it's like, get your logistics straight first and see if it's even worth it. Second thing to do there too is you brought it up that almost every restaurant now is doing that. So that comes down to marketing and the quality of literally paper goods and stuff that you're using, that marketing level at, the fresh to order, boxes and all the cool labels and the heating instructions, and how easy is it for your clients, and how fast can the food get there if it's Uber Eats, and who's managing that stuff. So, it's dealing with all that. One of the things that we struggle with here right now too is getting to go stuff. Like, we had a whole packaging set up and it was really good. And then, it runs out, with the pandemic and everything, we struggled to get the to-go boxes. We're struggling to get some of the other stuff, and people just don't have them. They're out all over town. So, 4 years ago, I never thought a food to-go box would be like the hottest commodity. That and gloves seem to be like the biggest thing that you can search for nowadays. So, it's those things that my advice for those things would be, just make sure you have the logistical ability to put those two things together and continue doing it. Yep. so that you don't overwhelm your kitchen and your staff and everything else.
The one thing you said there too that I've noticed, and I noticed it at a restaurant right near my house, a chain, Chipotle, but there's a Chipotle near my office that you go in, and it's a traditional Chipotle. I go to the one near my house, and they have a drive-through. What I like what they did, and they did this post pandemic, and I don't know why, I don't remember what was there, but now if you go in there, they've got an entire line over here that's for the walk-in, and they've got an entire line over there that only services that window. And it was kind of comical because I was there last week and they ran out of steak where I was at eating in, and they would. And I like it. I'm happy that they said, "Hey, can you wait a minute? We're almost done getting the steak over here." But the one lady's like, "Oh, we've got a full thing of steak over there." She's like, "That's theirs." Like we've got they're getting crushed. They've got their own tickets coming in. They've got their own chef preparing the food there. And that's the easy thing to do is go steal something from there. Now you mess them up. But I like the fact that when I look at how whoever designed this operation at the Chipotle near my house, obviously somebody way smarter and the higher up in the world than me in the restaurant world, but it works because you can literally see it's running two businesses in there. Whereas you go to a lot of restaurants and it's the same exact line, the same exact people. And that's why it gets messed up. Is this a third party? Is this to go? Is this a catering? Is this, somebody sitting in here?
Exactly. And so and again, when restaurants go full boat, and they are filling up, your chefs, sous chefs, line guys, the dining room becomes their first, freaking priority. And that's what that's what they're used to, and that's what they're doing. So if you slam them with a bunch of other stuff, you're going to get, you're going to put them in a situation where your to-go stuff is not at the level that you were doing when you were at half capacity, because they could handle it. So it's those type of things. And we look at that all the time in the restaurant. I'm part of a group that also has restaurants. So I've been working with them on how to do that. And we've toned down, honestly, now that the restaurants, we built a patio too during the pandemic so we could serve outside. So for us, that revenue stream of the patio plus being able to open added our extra 20% in sales. So from that point, the to-go orders we minimized how many to-go orders we could do because they were already doing, 15 to 20% more covers just based on the patio that was built. Yeah. So it's figuring those numbers out and what ends up being the best quality for the customers and your loyal patrons and focusing on that.
And I think, and I don't know if you've heard of people doing it also, but just testing the product like as a mystery shopper out and about. I had another friend of mine who owns a brewery locally, and their beer that they get called Hofbrauhaus. The beer they make locally is made here and served fine, but the beer that is served off premise comes from Munich, Germany. And he was at an event where they served Hofbrauhaus beer, and it was on a little riverboat. And this is years back. And he's telling me, he's like, man, people are walking up to me because they know I own the retail store. Like, man, the beer is skunked on here. Like, something wrong with the beer. And he's like, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just you're drinking beer that's 6 months old that came from Munich to the distributor to the States. The beer you drink in my restaurant, we brewed last month. And, and there's issues like that come up. And that was a big problem because people would drink the beer in the grocery stores here that they get, and they would drink his and they would think, oh, this isn't as good. And the same thing goes with food. I mean, you've got certain places know how to cater. I've seen restaurants that, there's a place locally called Eli's Barbecue in Cincinnati area that caters barbecue up and down the whole East Coast. And 2,000-3,000 person events. And then I've been to other places where a little mom and pop will cater something and the 30 people cripples them, and the mac and cheese isn't good, and they don't have plates, and they don't have their stuff together. So it comes down to knowing that the product you're putting out there is good representation of what you are. If you're a restaurant, what you want people to remember you by.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it is. It comes down to logistics and knowing what you're doing and making sure that you're looking at your P&L and saying, hey, what is our focus? What's our focus? What do we want to do? Who do we want to be? And how do we continue doing this? So every day every month, or when we're trying to discuss, like when this damn pandemic will end, which we thought would be a while ago, but it's not. So, how do you pivot once again? I feel like we're on our fourth pivot. Yep. And it's like, geez, this is, it's a struggle, but you still have to do it. And luckily we've learned some good lessons, and we're, using those to move forward.
Cool. Well, good stuff. Just like I've heard online, if somebody wants to contact you or find you, I've seen you on, Cater Source has articles that you've written on there. I've seen the podcast. Any other place people can get a hold of you? Are there any resources you recommend that you might have online, like they could buy or they could subscribe to?
Yeah, you can go to you can go to the Catering WTF email or website, and you can contact me through that way. I also have a consulting group called Scimitar Consulting Group, so you can go there and contact us. And then obviously the podcast for me was a podcast is kind of funny because that's kind of an alter ego for me.
Okay.
I am not that person at work. So it was a way of venting and having some frustration. And I, obviously have a lot of my friends listen to it and stuff. And, I try to tell my mom not to listen to it. But other than that, it was a fun way of doing that. And it grew in popularity and we were very happy with it. We're trying to, during the summer, get season 2 up and going. And maybe a little more tame this time. Yeah. But basically, you can reach out through that. You can reach out through the Scimitar Consulting Group. And then from there, I can give you more links to my personal email or whatever it is from there. But any questions or anything anybody wants to ask, I'm more than willing to help. This is a very hard industry. Just in general, in the last 2 years has been brutal. So I'm a big fan in having all the white coats stick together. So I know there's a lot of restaurants that compete and a lot of caterers that compete, but honestly, we're all doing the same thing and trying to end up with the same result for our clients. And we can share information, what works for you, what doesn't. Here's what works for us. The more information we can get from each other, the better we move forward as a group. So that's my ultimate goal. And if anybody wants to reach out for those things, again, those are the ways to reach me.
Yeah. And you're easy to find on Google. There's not many Chef Todd Annis. So
yeah, luckily there's not. So that's good. And there's
it's similar to Matt Plapp. I found a Matt Plappert out there, but there's not many Matt Plapps in the world.
Right. Exactly.
Well, cool. Well, I appreciate your time, and you're right. The restaurant industry as a whole, people within the kitchens, the general managers, all need to get together, work together more, talk together, collaborate, because it's a big business. There's a lot of things that happen out there. There's a lot of pieces of pie for everybody, and they always say all tides rise, man. If everybody gets a little better, people have a better experience.
100%.
You never know. In 20 years, they might quit making homes with kitchens because we enjoy the chef so much.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's hope. And it's not robots doing it. So.
Well, cool. Well, I appreciate your time and look forward to meeting up with you when I'm in Charleston in about a month for Cisco's event.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll reach out to Cisco and find out the information about that, and we'll try and get together at that time.
Cool. Sounds good. See you later.
All right. Thank you, man. I really appreciate it, man. You have a good one.
You too.
All right. Bye.